Hi, this is Tom with Culture Chap. So today we're talking yet again about backstage tours, and I'd like to talk about a different style of tour, the backstage tour done by a design professional. Now, this could be, as we've talked about before in the series, there's a basic backstage tour, and then because you're so popular, you have an advanced version, and maybe that's done by different departments. And I'm saying someone in design should do a backstage tour. Now, depending on who you choose, let me start again. You need someone well spoken. You don't need someone who is your best designer but is very shy. That doesn't work for talking to the public about everything and answering all their questions. Maybe you have someone who is in different parts of the department that can talk about all departments. So you have someone in set design that can talk about costumes, sound, set, everything. Well, you should hire that person. Or maybe you have a college student who is just learning about theater, but they're very enthusiastic, they're very gregarious, and they can talk about anything because they're learning. And they've learned enough so they can talk about anything you tell them to talk about. So, what I would do is if you're a theater that's a certain size and a certain budget, and you have set design models, physical models, that you can have in front of the set that has just been designed, you can talk about the difference between the model and what actually happened on stage. Because frequently you learn as you're building, and the thing that happened on stage is not exactly like the original model. Or maybe you just have drawings or color renderings of the costumes, but nothing of the set. That's all great. Maybe you have a smaller theater and your budget only allows for someone who's a stylist, costume designer. They have found clothes that are perfect for the show. Well, they still have to have a meeting with the entire production team, with the director, to talk about the direction of the show, what color they're going, direction of everything. So they only have photographs, perhaps from fittings. Maybe they have photographs of things that were wrong, like, hey, let's put that person in a sweater. Well, why? What's happening in that scene? And no one knows what's happening in the scene as well as the director. So even though it's winter, for instance, or today, the first day of autumn, I wore autumn colors. What if the costume person said, "Well, it's autumn in this particular place, so I thought it'd be cold, so that person's going to wear a cardigan." And the director says, "No, I would like to see evidence of autumn, so I want to see the orange, I want to see the green, I want to see what they're wearing." And so the sweater is chucked. Now, that sounds basic, but it can be interesting to an audience, especially if it's done in a sort of clear and concise manner. Not incredible details about the discussion. We had this, it was chucked. It's not the way the drawing you're looking at was conceived. So the character was exercising, so no sweater. The character is outside, but it's very warm still in autumn. It's the first day of autumn. That's said in the script. So they're not wearing a sweater. Perhaps they're carrying it. It becomes a prop later to throw, that kind of thing. How these decisions come to be. Audiences love to hear how the things were conceived and how they moved forward and what the end result was. Now, if you can do this in a way where you're talking about what happens to the characters and the scene and the set and how it all works together without giving spoilers, that's great. But it doesn't always happen. It's unlikely. You'll probably have to talk about what's happening in the scene, which could be spoilers. But there are ways that a clever person, a good conversationalist, can speak about the action of the play without giving away the whole plot. So, um, also details, especially about period shows that they wouldn't expect. Um, you know, this is a 17th century or 18th century dress, but our lead female, she decides that she's going to, beat off her attacker, which we should be doing because they can't all be damsels in distress that, faint the first time an attacker comes to them. There must have been women who, gave what for and they beat up their attacker. So, what we're trying to tell you, audience, is that we couldn't put this person in a corset because she has to get into a fight. The fight is staged in such a manner that a corset would really cut into her, really strangle her, and she fits the costume perfectly, so we went without. Also, there may be women at the time who didn't wear corsets, which a lot of costume designers never believe, but it's the truth. Maybe this character is a bit rebellious. Maybe she's a bit like Wonder Woman and she gets in a lot of scrapes, or she, has to run around a lot. She's a lot more action oriented, which I would like to see in some shows that are historical. Um, if you've seen the movie with Kate Winslet, A Little Chaos, she is a gardener, a female gardener that's, looked down upon. She's a female gardener putting together the garden at Versailles. So she doesn't wear all the junk. She wears a plain dress that she can get dirty, and she's, constantly put her hair back in a rag and puts mud in her face and so forth. It's not the precious sort of French Versailles gardener with a bonnet and a basket of flowers. She's not that gardener, which makes it all the more interesting. Or Pride and Prejudice, where they, with Keira Knightley, they chose to have a more realistic Pride and Prejudice with skirts with dirty hems because they're trudging through the mud. This is interesting. Maybe you want your show to be that way. Maybe that's something you want to communicate with your clientele. Why we did the show this way. There's many reasons. Why you don't use these colors that were popular at the time, but you do use these. Color theory, how come the only person wearing purple is the king? Well, there were reasons for that at the time that may not be clear to everyone now. So what was happening at the time and how we reinterpreted that? What colors did the set designer choose that would fight with the colors that the costumes were wearing, or costumes that the characters were wearing as costumes? All these things matter. And if you can find someone in your company to describe these things in an interesting manner, and again, go through them quickly, not the history of string or the history of corsets, touch on it, move ahead. This is what we chose, whether it's right or wrong. Not everything is as a painting, or not everything is as a catalog from the 1920s. It's not, those are historical references, but this is how we are experiencing the world of the play. So not all those historical references can be present. So people were rebellious. They wore different things. They painted their walls differently. They had different art on the walls, that kind of thing. It's all interesting and why you made these choices. Now, you probably can't get the director to do these tours. Often directors are only hired to the opening night, and they're visiting directors. They don't work for the company. Often it's the same with the designers who designed it, the set designer, the costume designer. They're off on the other projects, and you're doing these tours during the run of the show or after the run of the show. So there are plenty of people that you should think about that can memorize the script you tell them, that can be educated on the points you want to make about the design of it. Now, it should still be a backstage tour where they walk around, but everything's sort of tilted towards design. As we go through backstage left, everyone has to change. That's always a big one because they're all standing backstage left with you. Maybe there's 12 of them, maybe there's 20 of them, and you describe how many characters have to change at one time right there with these giant costumes. That's interesting to them. Point out the lights and say, now we have a number of different skin colors on stage in a number of vibrant outfits. So we had to balance our lighting. Now, you can't get too much into the science of it, but you want to talk about, we want everyone to have healthy looking skin. We want everyone to look good together. We want everyone well lit, even though this scene is candlelight. So we had to do this so it's candlelight. You see the candles on, but everyone could be seen of every skin tone, every shade, which is very important. A lot of people don't get lit well if you're not being careful. The music, harder to talk about, but maybe there's music between every scene change and why they chose to do that, to lift the feeling of the piece, to direct it, to be more cinematic, and why they chose the pieces they chose. You can't choose just anything. I was recently asked by a friend of mine who was doing a play that took place in the 80s whether he could use a certain song, and The song is very cleverly done. It's Madonna's physical attraction to the music from Bananarama's Cruel Summer. They took the music from Cruel Summer, only the instrumental, and only the words from Physical, and they put them together. It's beautiful. It's a great, it's not even a mashup, it's like a recreated song. But both companies still can slap a restraining order on you for using their property. So you have to get permission or create something yourself. And I said in the end, you can claim ignorance that you didn't know this remix was something that they could, copyright, but then you lose the song for that important scene. When all that was needed was, 30 seconds of, we're in the 80s. And that could be done with other types of music, other types of instrumental, other types of sound. So that's important to tell the audience. Also, that you're not recreating a movie. We're doing Les Mis, but we can't recreate the movie. We're doing Cabaret, but we can't recreate the movie. We chose different costumes because we have a budget. We chose different scenery because we have a budget. Why do we choose this furniture? It is reinforced because of all the dancing that has to be done on top of it for the cabaret. So we can't have the same furniture as the movie. We're doing our own version because of budget, because of style, because of room backstage. Sometimes furniture is chosen because it has to come back and forth from the backstage rather silently, and you can't have these large pieces often on the set all the time. All these things matter because the audience is very curious about theater and they want to know why certain decisions were made. And the people that take this tour, they'll be fascinated by all these reasons and all this stuff that you want to talk about. So choose someone good, choose someone smart, choose someone who's going to answer their questions in a polite way, also answer their questions, especially if it's a show with a mystery, clearly like, I could tell you why, but it'll be revealed when you see the show, that will deflect the things that they shouldn't talk about. And they should know what they shouldn't talk about. Often people don't really because they think everyone knows the show. But maybe someone's seeing Cabaret for the very first time. Okay. So don't reveal anything. Maybe they're seeing Agatha Christie's The Mousetrap for the very first time, which is the most done show in the world. It's performed the most frequently. Don't give away any secrets and tell them that's a spoiler. I can't tell you, but all the reasons I've given you, you will see become clear in the scene. And that will be even better for them. Again, I want you to do backstage tours for all your theaters because I want your patrons to come back all the time to all your shows and to see the intelligence and the care you put into your pieces. It's important. All right. That's enough for today. Happy autumn, and like and subscribe, and please share this with a friend and come back for more. All right. Thanks.